The Battle of Fromelles, fought between the 19th and 20th of July 1916, is considered by many to be the most devastating 24 hours in Australian history, with the loss of nearly 2,000 Australian men. Is it worth digging up the mass graves of these Aussie legends, or should we leave them to rest under the victor's terms?
On July 19, 1916, the British 61st Division and the Australian 5th Division planned to break through a fortified German line near the town of Fromelles. The battle was intended as a diversion to prevent the reinforcement of troops in trenches back at the Somme. Additionally, most of the Australians were inexperienced in trench warfare and were outnumbered, severely lowering their chances of winning this unfavourable battle. As the sun slowly started to drift into the hills, the bulk of the battle would start to fight. Thousands of Australians ran into the no man's land, fighting for a glimpse of victory, but as the days swiftly passed, nothing but loss and suffering could be seen for the Australians. The battle had been a complete disaster for the Australian side, ending with 5,500 casualties, and the battle would end up being one of the worst days in Australian history.
Throughout the Battle of Fromelles, hard fighting on both sides would cause the casualties to rise to unprecedented heights for Australia. The catastrophic death toll from the fighting has caused much grief and suffering for the families of the lost men. Families of the dead have been grieving since 1916 without any place to go and pay their respects, so the recovery of the remains would end generational trauma with a mourning place. The recovery of the dead also gives them dignity that they never would have received if they stayed buried. Additionally, the Germans intentionally removed any identifying evidence, such as rising sun badges, as these badges would have made it obvious that the soldier was an Australian. The Germans knew that even if they were found, these men wouldn't get the recognition they deserved, but after careful research and investigation, we were able to identify many of these lost men and give them a proper military burial, letting them rest under friendly ground. It gives the families of the dead relief, knowing that their loved ones lie to rest safely.
Melbourne history teacher and amateur archaeologist Lambis N. Glezos was one of the leading historians in finding the remains of over 200 men.
We do have that moral obligation. If you can find your war dead, you've got to do it. It's not ancient history. It's very personal and very tangible. I believe we should. I believe we have a moral obligation to find and recover our war dead.
As he states here, these men are not ancient history. They are men with names and families who mourn their deaths a century later. These are men with direct descendants only a few generations apart. These men and their families do not deserve the neglect that they have received for a century. One of these men was Lance Corporal William Vernon Bose, also known as Billy. His family felt grief, not knowing where he was or what happened to him. As his great-nephew, Alan Grant, says,
"What were some of the things that the family wanted to know?"
They just wanted to know where he was. They had no known grave. They had nowhere to go and mourn him.
This quote shows us that his family is desperate for even a hint for where their forgotten relative may be, showing us the sheer importance of finding where the forgotten bodies lay. Although there are plenty of reasons why the lost diggers of Fromelles should be dug up, there are many reasons why they also shouldn't be dug up, and many factors to consider when digging them up. Respecting people's beliefs and culture is a main concern seen by people who criticize the digging up of the bodies. To help fix this problem, we can ask the relatives of the fallen soldier about how they would prefer their lost relative to be kept. Another problem that arises with the digging up of the bodies is the mass destruction that can be caused by these severe dig sites. However, this problem is easily counterable by being delicate and patient with digging, making this claim obsolete.
After deeply consulting our research, we as a group support the decision that we should dig up the past in order to connect the past to the present and to save our lost history. By excavating the lost diggers of Fromelles, we're able to both recover valuable lost Australian history, but also give the lost soldiers recognition for their efforts and a proper burial and memorial. The result of excavating the lost diggers of Fromelles and discovering the stories of the lost soldiers brought immense joy to the families and descendants of the soldiers. Lambus and Glezos and his team were able to identify many different lost soldiers. We were able to learn about their past. By digging up the past, we are able to remember and recognise those who were lost as a valuable part of Australian history. We're able to piece together the past and set our path towards the future. Thank you for listening to this documentary.